Shot from 5 different angles, the original 3rd scale miniature looked great, but HBO wanted more of a fiery event. We ended up replacing the entire plate with full CG simulation of rigid bodies and fire. It turned out to be one of the most immensely complex digital pyro shots in the series. HBO wanted the destruction of King's Landing walls and scorpions to look like a bunch of light cardboards being pressure washed with an insane source of energy. The key was to build underlying structures correctly and simulate all the interaction within our multi-body simulation software, Flowline. Facade assets were built one-to-one to the plate based on accurate LiDAR references. We used a combination of projection to preserve all the detail from the plates as a foundation of the assets. We included all structural layers underneath in a functional way with layer-to-layer constraints to get the most out of the dynamics. We simulated additional fire that was 100% in sync with the highly detailed practical elements provided by HBO on a shot-by-shot basis. This allowed us to augment the raw plate with full destruction and maintain the photographic look from the original principal shot. The entire city was set on fire and smoke as one massive simulation using our Flowline fluid solver. Based on the assets from the previous season, various different parts of the Red Keep were built from scratch with correct facade and interior layers to accommodate our destruction pipeline. HBO wanted the Dragonfire to look extremely forceful, but staying away from the Wrecking Ball look. We used different coupled simulation techniques with our multi-body simulation framework, Flowline, to get the right balance between fire, clustered fractures, dust, and smoke, and ashes. Episode 5 included some of the longest single-take shots in the history of this series. We delivered shots with over 4 minutes of runtime in a single take. The camera follows Arya in the streets of King's Landing, surrounded by constant blasts of dragonfire, near-miss building destruction, environment, and crowd extension. Game of Thrones historically has relied heavily on shooting a lot of practical elements per shot, and these were no exception. Some of the shots included over 50 elements that needed to be combined with the main plate aside from the hundreds of additional rendered digital effects. These required precise layering both on a technical and creative level. These elements were designed on a per-shot basis, either with motion-controlled cameras or as an independent element, following the shot's lighting and composition. Dragonfire was a mixture of practical elements that was shot using 2 independent motion-controlled hydraulic arms, one driving a flamethrower and the other taking care of the camera. Speed limitations of this equipment was compensated, and the elements were carefully tracked into the shot. The practical fire elements were further augmented with digital fire, interacting with the environment in one cohesive composite. Many hero shots on episode 5 required precise close-up composite of Dany sitting on the back of a dragon while holding onto the scales. Aside from the challenging foreground integration, these shots included complex digital environment layers, atmospheric, multi-layered fire, and smoke elements. Due to the complexity and level of destruction required for episode 6, we built an entire CG version of the city that could be shot from any angle, from expansive wides to tight close-ups. As a starting point, the production provided us with photogrammetry of Dubrovnik, the real-life location of King's Landing, which we used as a guide to lay out the city. The majority of the city was built using modular assets, similar to Lego building blocks. Our models team built individual assets such as windows, roof tiles, and bricks in the Dubrovnik style of architecture, and using a mixture of proprietary tools, combined with City Engine, populated the city procedurally with unique modular city blocks. Procedural shaders and textures applied to the building provided further variation. We also built a complete digital plaza around Dany, which used the same module-based techniques similar to the rest of the environment. We were able to leverage V-Ray advanced architecture to only load each module used once. Procedural destruction simulations for Dragon and Whitefire were run on each intact building to make sure they collapsed correctly and were further augmented with additional damage modules, giving us an unprecedented amount of flexibility. To add to the feeling of devastation post-attacks on King's Landing, we developed a monochromatic tone for the environment. Procedurally generated snow fell naturally across the ruined city, and we simulated haze to give greater isolation to the characters in front of the camera.
Hey, it's Lisa. For all you GOT fans, there are some cool facts from the series in order to make their reactions as realistic as possible. Most of the Game of Thrones cast hasn't read the books. And in all of the Game of Thrones scenes where Tyrion eats meat, actor Peter Dinklage, a strict vegetarian, is actually eating tofu. Now, who's your favourite character? Let me know below. And remember to click down here to subscribe or on the side for more great content.